Well, hello. It's time for another exciting episode of Pens in Use. This is the show where I talk about the fountain pens and inks I've been using throughout the week. So, let's dive into it. If videos like this interest you, where I talk about fountain pens, both new and old and at all price points, I would invite you to subscribe. We'll explore North Dakota in some of these videos, and who knows what we'll get into in these pens in use. Today I have a lot of diverse topics I'm just going to kind of gloss over. Some of it's just going to be cute little local North Dakota thingies. Others, a little more serious. So, we'll see where we go, but feel free to comment down below, and of course I would always invite you to subscribe. So, let's take a look at some pens. Alright, so these are the pens that I've been using this week from left to right. We have a Platinum 3776 with a music nib, a Pon Senior, a vintage pen from Norway, a Böhler pen, which is a German make. I don't think it was ever a very big company, but there you go. Lamy 2000, of course you've all heard of Lamy. Montblanc 225, you've heard of that company. Pelikan M1000, by the way, the 225 is another vintage pen, probably from the late 60s, early 70s. Pelikan M1000, Jinhao 100, and finally a Moster-Penkala pen from probably the 1920s. As always, I'll be filming this in my jellyfish-flavored cognitive surplus theory notebook. Alright, so the first pen is this Platinum 3776. Last time this pen came out to play, I pronounced its name as Chart. I was corrected by somebody who said it's Chartre. But I had been corrected previously with a different pronunciation that no, it's pronounced Chart. And I looked online, and apparently there is some controversy over whether the correct pronunciation is Chartre or Chart. So I'm amused by Chart, so yeah. I may just avoid pronouncing it altogether, because French is the only language where I get very emotional criticism when I don't say something correctly. But anyway, it's a Japanese pen. So you'd think they'd have a pretty Japanese blue that they could name it after. But Platinum seems to name a lot of their pens after several French places. So for whatever that's worth. It does have a music nib. I'm planning a video that I want to film this week on a rodeo where I talk about some music nibs. I only have 3. I have this one, I have a Sailor music nib, and I have a Noodler's music nib. So I'm going to compare the 3 of them. I don't know when it will release. You know, I like to have a library of videos, so when I get a busy week like I've had the last few weeks, I can still put out videos. The ink in this is Lamy Turquoise. And I like Lamy Turquoise. You know, I have one more bottle of turquoise ink yet to use up. It's a Sailor turquoise ink. I have used up, well, I'm trying to remember all the different ones I've used up. But I know one was Hiroshizuku and one was Rohrer and Klingner. Okay, we got to zoom out a little. There, that's better. I'm leaning toward Lamy Turquoise as being the winner, partly because it's so common, and partly because it behaves so well on a lot of different paper. You know, do you have a favorite turquoise? Let me know. This is the Pon Senior. So this is kind of reminiscent of one of those Parker Vacuumatics, but Pon Senior. And this is a Norwegian pen. Norway no longer has a fountain pen industry, but it did have one at one time, and if you search up my video on the Pon 52, you can find a little bit of the history of Pon. But anyway, that is a fun nib. Isn't that fun? The ink in it is Herbin. J. Herbin. Yeah. Bleu. See, I even worry, like, if I get the E and the U backwards, somebody is going to criticize. Bleu Myosotis, and I don't know how to pronounce that. I didn't look it up, so, you know. But anyway, it's a pleasant enough blue color. I'm actually going to come back and talk about this blue ink at the very end of the writing. The bottle that this ink comes in is just plain different. And a pleasant enough blue, just... And Herbin makes some very nice colors. I like that they're kind of understated. This is a Böhler pen. Have to remember the umlaut. I'm looking at the... Oh, there it is. I don't know if you'll be able to make that out. There we go. Just make out the umlaut on it. But anyway, it has a pleasant little, one of those vintage Bach nibs that I've always really appreciated. This pen is short enough that I like to post it. Usually I'm not a poster, but this pen is a rare exception. Yeah, see, isn't that nice? So it's Böhler. The ink in it is Diamine. Autumn Oak, which is a very attractive orange. Orange, you glad I used it today? Ha 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 ha. I plan to, when I use up this bottle, this is an ink I would replace. Of course, I have several other oranges I want to use up also, so it may be a while, but I just decided, I'm going to, even though it's not autumn anymore, I'm just going to set a goal of using this ink up. I'm a ways off on it, but you know what? Slow and steady wins the race. Then I have the lovely Lamy 2000. Actually, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. Maybe I should be using up some of the other oranges that I'm not so sure I'll like. I may discover one I like better. So maybe that's what I'll do. I think that was some condensate. Oh, there's also some hair on the nib. Lamy, there we go. Lamy 2000. This one is an extra fine. I just refilled it last night because it was almost empty. So this is Omas Black. When I use up this bottle of black, that'll be that. Omas Black ink is no longer being made. I don't remember when they were making ink that anybody really raved about them or criticized them. The only thing I ever remember hearing about Omas was their unique bottles. They had facets on them so you could kind of tilt them at an angle to fill your pen, especially when the ink level's getting down in the bottle. Then we get to my Montblanc 225. There's the bird splat. And this bird splat broke off when I bought it. If you buy vintage pens, sometimes you'll find parts missing. But that also often makes them a little lower cost. So, do you want it to be perfect or do you want it to be functional and enjoy writing with it? That's kind of one of those things you'll have to decide if you buy a vintage pen. So Montblanc 225, an extra fine, and the ink in it is another brand I enjoy. This is a very muted color, Callifolio Violet. I have another violet ink which is much more in your face with its violetness. And it's a scented ink, Dea Trementis Violet. So, which one's going to win? Who knows? I wonder if I own a Pelikan violet too. I feel like I might. Could be downstairs. Not seeing it up here, but it might be downstairs in my reserve. We'll find out one of these days. Speaking of violet, that's what's in this pen. This is a different type of violet. So this is the Pelikan M1000. I recently sold my Pelikan M800, so I'm hoping it's being enjoyed in a better home where it's more appreciated. I just have other pens I enjoy that fit that role. So, why keep it? Because I wasn't inking it up. We'll give ourselves a little more room here. So Pelikan. This is an ink I really enjoy. This is Noodler's. I won't share the words, but one of my pen pals had some words about Noodler's ink in a recent letter, and let's just say he doesn't like Nathan Tardif's politics. That's the thing, when you start sharing your views on things, you might end up actually offending people. Weird, that. And there is a difference between disagreeing over a topic and Nathan Tardif has made a few mistakes that, yes, are offensive. I don't want to get into that controversy, but anyway, it's one of those things, when I use up my Noodler's inks, this is one that's almost gone. Not as low as the one in the next pen. Do I want to replace them? Because I'm going to talk to you about the problem with the ink that's in this next pen, which is also a Noodler's. And it's just a ongoing problem I've had with Noodler's inks and other people have mentioned. And I don't know what the argument's going to be, but anyway, let's talk about the pen. This is a Jinhao 100. I like this finish. In fact, it reminds me a lot. A few years ago, Aurora came out with a special series of their Aurora 88s that were colored after the planets, although I could not see the connection between the color of the pen and the color of the planet in a lot of cases. They had a veneer finish, which was Venus, and, the veneer was this color. Well, if you've been to Venus, you know that, at least from orbit, it is a very yellow planet. This isn't yellow. I own one that's in the Giove finish, which is Jupiter. Not even slightly Jupiter colored. So I don't know what Aurora 88's idea, or Aurora's idea was. Now, what I did with this Jinhao, which looks a lot like a Parker Duofold, I put a Nemosine reentry nib on it. Sadly, Nemosine is no longer making these nibs. I can't find reentry nibs of this kind anywhere, but it's so pretty. So, in a pen that, looks kind of nice, but is just kind of meh, we've suddenly created a very different writing experience. So it's a Nemosine. I think it's a fine, but I don't know that. This pen doesn't hold the greatest seal, but there's another problem with this that's going to show up here that's related to that. So this is Noodler's. Another Noodler's ink. Black Swan. In English roses. So the Australian roses is sort of a purplish. This one is more of a reddish brown. I like the Australian roses better, but I like this one too. Now, I was writing quite a bit with this pen yesterday, so I'm not sure what's going to happen next. But anyway, you see that? So I wrote this letter to a pen pal, and the letter, I wrote one side of it with this pen, and I looked at it, I thought, that's still shiny. I had to leave this letter to dry overnight before I could write on the other side. I've had the experience with some Noodler's inks where it takes multiple days for it to dry. I know probably Nathan Tardif, the creator of Noodler's inks, would say, well, don't use your fancy little Tomoe River paper. Use good old American paper. I don't know that it's a feature that it takes so long for it to dry. I mean, this is kind of in between paper, and it's American paper, so there you go. I find that the longer an ink sits in a pen, especially one that maybe doesn't have the greatest seal, including some Noodler's pens, the Noodler's inks just get so it's harder and harder for them to get dry. Doesn't make sense, but that's what I'm running into with Noodler's inks. And that is one of the things that gives me pause about, do I want more? Do I want to put up with this anymore? So, anyway, that's a Noodler's thing. My last pen is a Moster-Penkala from the 1920s. This is a Croatian pen. The Penkala part of the name comes from a Polish businessman, inventor, who lived kind of an exciting life and died excitingly in a plane crash. And Moster, who was a Jewish businessman who, unfortunately, in the Second World War, was killed in a concentration camp. It's got just a tiny little baby nib. So anyway, the nib on it, I don't know if we can see it here. We'll try. The nib on it has a cute little lion's head, and I'm not lying. And it's a short pen. It's a, button filler. And let's just see how it writes. By the way, it's little, so this is another pen that I post when I use it. So, that was unexpected. So, the Omas bottle that I was bragging up. I wish they did a better job showing the color, because the Omas Black has the same thing there. Faceted. So you can, sit it on its side. Because this is getting lower. Let's dial up the brightness. I'll try to remember what my brightness was. So we're going to get the full effect, doggone it. Just ignore the dust. Maybe I will uncap it. That isn't bubbling. Shoot. Okay, so we'll see if I got any ink in it, but I heard no gurgling. It should gurgle when you press the button as bubbles come out the end. This is not a pen I restored, by the way. I won't say who restored it, but whee! That's bright. But anyway, we'll see if I've filled it, even though it didn't gurgle, but I'm not holding my breath. Ooh, okay. Because I was writing with this Moster-Penkala. And get the name correct, because it's a little different. Doesn't trip off the tongue. SW68, number 930, and it is an extra fine. Okay, it must have been just empty. This pen's addictive. This is fun. And we have Omas Gray. I was reading recently about gray versus gray, with an A versus an E. Apparently one of them is more typically American, one's more typically British. Both are correct. And after I read the article, I thought, oh, well, now I know. And, but I don't know. I don't remember anymore. I read that article this week, too. Oh, shoot. I was half off screen. Doggone it. So, there you go. There's my pens and inks I've been using this week. I do want to talk a little bit more about ink, though, because I have had some questions about my progress with inks. So since I see that this Black Swan and English Roses is still shiny, we'll just set that aside and not close it. First, my bottle of Black Swan and English Rose. There's its label. I'm trying to keep it on its side so that you can sort of see. The ink level is about there. Oh, no, lower. There. So I still have a fair amount. So if I turn it on its side. So I still have a few pens I'm going to fill with that. Because it's amazing. A pen, most pens will hold like a milliliter to a milliliter and a half of ink. Which isn't really a lot of ink. It takes a long time to get through a bottle of ink. This thing here is my bottle of Bleu Myosotis. I don't know why I bought it. I just know it was early on when I was getting into fountain pens as a collection thing rather than just as I prefer writing with this pen and I'm going to use my Parker Quink Black. And I discovered the world of ink colors. So we've got, there's its name. So it's a flower. I think it's called a forget-me-not in English. I put it into this. This is a Peniter inkwell. I do own a Visconti ink pot too. I want to review them and I just haven't yet. But there's a reason I put it in this. So, oh look, that's cute. We have a heart. And nothing special on either side. It's got a ribbon. It's hearty. Has to sit like this, so, a little dealio about Bleu Myosotises and, this is romantic and all that junk. And no, I didn't buy it to romance someone. I've got romantic tissue paper. And it's a cork. And it is so flippin' narrow here that almost none of my pens, including my slim black vintage pens, can fit through that hole. So I am stuck using the damn Peniter inkwell so I can use up this flippin' ink. I got told not to swear in my videos today, and I've just done it 2 or 3 times. The ink level is about there. So I've got a ways to go with the pen. I'm not quite halfway through it, but I just decided I'm going to set a goal of using this up. And then I'm never going to fill this bottle again. It's unique enough. I may just put it up as a decorative item somewhere, but yeah, I am never going to use this bottle again. So if you see a novelty bottle out there, think about it. Maybe you don't want it. The idea is cool, and then you get the reality. Okay, so let's talk about some other stuff. So those are fountain pens and inks I've been using this week, and past few weeks. Busy, but I taking the time, even though it's a little later than I would have liked, to do pens in use tonight. So you got to see the progress I'm making with 2 inks. I'm kind of enjoying that. I've got those 2 are the closest, but I have several bottles of ink that are just like teetering on the edge of being empty, and I'm very excited about that. So these are big bottles, not the little bottles that are the easy victories. These are big bottles. So yeah, I very excited to see some big bottles eliminated from my collection. It's one of those things that you just all of a sudden, whoops, how did that happen? So, if when I die, which hopefully is many years from now, I plan to not leave behind so many bottles of ink. I'm probably going to leave behind a lot of books and leave behind a lot of fountain pens and more typewriters than a normal person should own. But I do not plan to leave behind the current ink collection. So, whoever's cleaning up my estate in this tiny 672 square foot house, don't worry, you won't have to worry about ink or clothing or antiques, or anything valuable really, because I don't really have much that's worth much money. So, anyway, getting rid of inks and happy feeling about that. So, let's get the computer closer so I can read. But not too close, because then I have to put on my reading glasses to read it. So we're going to read it from a distance. So one thing that happened recently, it was on a Thursday, is the power went out. The power went out all across southwestern North Dakota and even into parts of Montana and South Dakota. About 10,000 homes were without power. I was one of them. So I was teaching freshmen. We were just cleaning up after a lab, and boop, it all goes dark. And for a second I thought, what kid just turned off the lights? Nope, it wasn't a kid. The lights were off in the whole school. So that was fun. So we kept going. I taught my 7th grade class, which came in right after, and of course my whole lesson was involved them being on the computer that day, and so I'm like, shoot, and I can't even run anything off. So I had them do a lesson on tuning forks and figuring out the bigger numbers, which is the higher frequencies, mean higher pitch, and the smaller numbers, which mean lower frequencies or lower pitch. And they got to experiment with putting tuning forks in water and seeing it jump around. And it was a loud, annoying lesson, but we got through it. That afternoon, we were finally sent home at about 1:45 because the power was not coming back on. So I got home and kept expecting, of course, now that we've all been sent home, the power's going to blink back on. It did finally, what was it, like 3:34? Somewhere not too long after school would have ended. And it stayed on for about half an hour and then went off for another hour and then finally came on and stayed on. In the country, some of the people were talking more like 7 o'clock when it finally came on. But what caused it was just ice on the power lines, and the wind got going. The lines start swinging, and then they rip loose, and that's that. Physics. Another interesting piece which would just be of North Dakota interest, but I think illustrates a larger concern that people have all over. What do you do with old structures? There's something about an older building that's very cool. They don't build them like they did back then. My school district actually consolidated with a neighboring school district 17 or 18 years ago. Anyway, the year I was hired. The neighboring school district was housed in a building that was built in 1912. Well, the high school was built in 1912. The elementary school was built in the 1960s. That 1912 building is very cool. Now, it's 3 stories high, and it has basement classrooms and stairs everywhere, and no thought to handicap accessibility. So it's basically unused, and but very cool. I have actually shown it in a video here. Actually, one of my earliest videos on this channel was a tour of that building, but I took it down because back then I didn't understand about copyrighted music, which I do now. So, took the whole thing down. But anyway, example something very cool. But what do you do with it? Well, in Bismarck, North Dakota, there is a railroad bridge that crosses the Missouri River. It's one of these old, truss bridges with the, big iron girders and everything. Built in the 1920s. Trouble is, a lot of the trains now are double stacking containers, and they can't fit under the trusses in the bridge. So what do? What do you do with that bridge? There's nothing you can do with it. You can't make it so it can accept these bigger trains. So what the BNSF, the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad, would like to do, and they've actually started construction, is a new railroad bridge. And who knows, they might even have more than one track across it. I haven't been close enough to the bridge. I lie slightly. I've been really close to the bridge, but I can't remember if there's more than one track across it or not. But the new bridge is going to just be able to carry a lot more capacity. But there are people suing, have tried to sue to preserve the old bridge. And yeah, I know there are cities like Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is one of them, or Cartwright, North Dakota, if you've ever been there, which have old railroad bridges they use for walking paths. Minneapolis, a couple of years ago, Mr. Pierre Gustafson took me to some parks that incorporated old bridges. Very cool. But for whatever reason, I don't know the reasoning, the railroad would prefer to take this bridge down. And so people are suing to preserve it. So, the question then becomes, when do you preserve it? How do you decide it's worth preserving? When do you decide that, oh, yeah, it'd be cool to keep it, but it's got to go? Like, I know a school that had an old building, probably built in the teens. They ended up tearing down. It was their elementary school. Very cool elementary school. I mean, it was like the postcard of elementary schools. Multiple stories again. Not handicap accessible. Classrooms had nice little coat rooms as you went in, then into this nice classroom with huge old windows. And they tore it down. Why? Because bats had gotten into it, and it was very badly contaminated by feces containing very dangerous viruses. So they decided that, we can't afford to build new and deal with the cleanup. Plus it's attached to our high school. So they decided to just tear it down. And going into that town, Mott, North Dakota, if you really care, it's a totally different approach now from the direction I come, because you're not coming up to this beautiful old school. You're coming up to where it used to be. So, you want to keep these old buildings, and it's history, and I think there is value in keeping an old building. I live in an old building. I am involved in preserving an old country church right now. But at the same time, sometimes the time comes when you say, but it's gotta go. There's no saving it. And where is that boundary? I don't know. But something to think about anyway. My next couple topics are pretty short, but I just thought worth pointing out, because I haven't done pens in use in a few weeks. One of them is about get-rich schemes. So there was an advertisement video that was coming on a lot whenever I would watch YouTube. And it was this nerdy guy talking into a microphone, because the new trend seems to be, let's make the microphone visible. Somewhere I read an explanation of that, but I don't know what it is. I guess I didn't care. But anyway, he's talking into his microphone about YouTube residuals and getting paid to watch YouTube videos and all the money you can make. And I just thought, yeah, right. Well, turns out it is a yeah, right, because I linked to an article talking about it. But apparently people fall for this stuff. What he's getting you to pay for is his little course on YouTube residuals. And then, good luck. Oh, you're not making money? You're a bad student. So, anyway, it was interesting. I linked to another article, actually about Mott again. They have a lot of international teachers now from the Philippines, and that's becoming a trend in North Dakota. We have a shortage of teachers, and some schools are solving that shortage by finding teachers in the Philippines or other countries and getting them to come over here. I don't know. Of course, this article's in a magazine that likes to put a positive spin on anything, but I don't know how some of these international teachers feel about coming to these small towns. Some of them are just really small and really isolated, and some of them are very, let's just say, very unique situations. And I've just wondered, what is it really like? And I took a class with a guy from the Philippines. He was working in a private school, and he had to work there for a certain number of years, but he's hoping to get into a different school after he'd worked in this private school. So anyway, it was interesting to talk to him. His family was over here, and he had them enrolled in the private school, and the kids, not his wife, obviously. But anyway, it was interesting. And, when you have a worker shortage, maybe recruiting internationally is the way to do it and give people a chance to get some new experiences. Because I'm going to guess, I've never lived in the Philippines. I've never been there. I don't know a lot about the Philippines. I know a little bit about the Philippines because, of course, they've been in the news with some of their various leaders. I remember, well, it doesn't matter. We don't need to get into politics. Short version, working in rural North Dakota would be a different experience for somebody from the Philippines, just like working in the Philippines would be a different experience for somebody from rural North Dakota. So, I suppose even if you're here and you're thinking, ooh, I really want to go home, it's an experience, and you can embellish your resume and have that richer wealth of experience as a teacher. So, anyway, it was interesting. Interesting way to deal with the teacher shortage, and honestly, some of these small towns, I think it's good for the kids to be exposed to people from different cultures. We're seeing more of that in a lot of rural North Dakota towns now, that people from different countries coming into them, and I think it's a very healthy thing. So, I'm also going to mention an article I saw on YouTube. It's Veritasium, who's always a very interesting, if you're into science or math. He did a piece on the 30 years it took to develop a blue LED. Now, that might not sound like much, but I want you to remember, LEDs don't get their color from the little plastic shield around them. They actually get their color from how the electricity is passed through them. And it took this particular scientist 30 years, sometimes fighting against his superiors, to finally develop a blue LED. Now, you're saying, good, we got a blue LED, isn't that special? Okay, you don't see them, but to either side of the camera, lighting me, are LEDs that came from the development of the blue LED. Because once they figured that out, then they could quickly figure out how to make white LEDs or soft white LEDs or LEDs that could be adjusted to different colors. That's what's lighting this. Desk lamp, which I'm not using right now, but you saw in use during pens in use. LED, white LEDs. Behind me, LEDs. Above me is an LED that can turn multiple colors. On my porch, I have an LED that can do amazing light shows. So the police light show is one I'm looking forward to if I'm home sometime when they do when the trick-or-treating happens. But anyway, the point is, it's amazing, and how much accident, how much just hard work, unrewarded hard work as it turns out, went into this development. Science is often portrayed in the movies as magical, like, oh, we have this virus. Oh no, everybody is sick and dying. Dear scientist nerd character, it's your turn to be heroic and have your episode to shine. So scientist nerd character spends some nerdy days in the lab, and then finally, at the last minute, comes forward with a test tube. I have the cure. And like, oh, wow, we've done amazing science. And no, it doesn't work that way. It's a lot of hard work, small incremental improvements, a lot of blind alleys, a lot of failures, over and over and over again. And Veritasium tells that story of the creation of the blue LED in a way that is very interesting, which is why he's a successful channel, because he can make something like that interesting to mere mortals. I have a piece from Rob Port, who's a North Dakota columnist, and he's talking about some politicians. And one of the things he just brings up in it, that's the main point of his whole article, it's okay to change your mind. I don't have the same views I did when I was 18 or when I was 30 or even when I was 40. We change. And a politician, as they learn more, you know, if you learn something that just totally undermines what you've believed this whole time, do you say, forget it, still believe it? Or do you say, oh, yes, this new evidence has caused me to change my mind? Usually it doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. And that's what I'd like to think. If I've got evidence that shows me I am wrong, I should change my mind. So that's what he gets into in that article. And politicians often will point to, well, you once held this view, and now you hold this view. Can't we change our mind? And I don't want to get into specific politicians today because that just sends us down a political road, and I don't want to go there. But I remember a presidential primary campaign where one of the people who was campaigning was accused of flip-flopping. And yeah, if you vote one way one week and another way the next week based on special interest, something's going on, usually. But if over a career, some of these politicians have been in office for decades. Again, that's another issue whether that's a good thing or not. But if I went into office, I'm almost 50. If I went into office in my 20s, yeah, over the last few decades, I have changed views. You'd see a lot of changes, and you would be able to say, flip-flopper, but am I? Or have I matured and learned more? So, anyway, that's what the article gets into. And then I'm going to leave it on a little bit of a downer, but I wanted to mention one other topic, and I have 2 articles about it. One of them is about a congressman. So, sad to say, here in the United States, one of the things that happens more than it should are mass shooting events. And it was a celebration of the Kansas City Chiefs winning the Super Bowl. They had a parade, and somebody decided to be a shooter. And anyway, this politician accused a specific person of being the shooter. And whoopsie, it wasn't them. But meanwhile, they are getting death threats and all kinds of stuff because of this politician having to spout off without the facts. And I'll just close with one other, which comes from the state of Utah. There was this woman on the State Board of Education who decided that a girl athlete playing at the high school level was trans. And does she think, something's kind of suspicious about that one, and keep it to herself? Or, say it to one or 2 of her friends? Oh no! She has to use her public position and social media to say, that girl is trans. Well, it's a girl. And guess what? The crazies glommed onto that, and this girl now has to have police protection. Not for something she did, but because some politician decided to use their power to spout off something they knew nothing about. So, what I'm going to say to close that, wrap this whole thing up, is don't share it unless you know it. If you don't know, don't speculate. A while back, there was the whole event where there was video footage of a Native American drummer in the face of a high school kid, and the high school kid's kind of smirking, and the news reporting in a lot of media outlets went it was a racial event against this Native American. Turns out that the whole story was way more complicated than it looked. But all these reporters, I want to be first. And they jump in and use their very public platform. And I'm pretty sure I would disagree with that kid on a lot of stuff. But, yeah, he was basically innocent in that whole deal. And, again, we're using that platform that we have and misusing it. And it is so easy to do. I have articles that I have saved up about individuals, just ordinary people. Not people like me that have a YouTube presence, just ordinary people. Post something on Facebook about, did you see that guy at the park taking pictures? Oh my God, I'll bet he's a, I don't want to use the word on my channel because I might get demonetized, but anyway, a person who likes small children, let's just say. True story that happened in Fargo, by the way. The police even asked this man to stay away from the park. Well, whoopsie, he's a photographer and really wasn't caring about the kids. He was just photographing the park, but oh well, somebody had to get on social media and blow it out of proportion without just going up to the guy and saying, hey, I see you're taking pictures. What are you up to? Could have solved the whole problem right there. But no, we're going to get on social media and post something stupid. Actually, this is probably the wrong gesture. It's probably on one of these, and which I can't do, but side issue. So, yeah, just think before you post it and find out the facts first. And so anyway, on that happy note, I want to thank you for watching. And if videos like this interest you, where I talk about fountain pens, both new and old and at all price points, or where I sometimes explore North Dakota and topics in more depth, I would invite you to subscribe. And hey, I think out of all of the ones I brought up today, although I'm the most passionate about the last topic, the one I'm actually the most interested in is, what is your feeling on preservation of historic buildings? I do a channel where I restore old vintage fountain pens that don't get the love from the community, really. I am starting to fix up a few typewriters. I like old stuff. I live in an old house, which I'm trying to fix up. But at what point do you just say, nope, it's got to go? So I'd love to hear your comments on that topic, especially with buildings. So, bridges. So I want to thank you for watching. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.